Welcome back to another video, and today I will be showing my favorite spring eyeshadow palettes for 2024. Today we will be doing another palette video, so because we are getting closer to the Easter and closer to the already April, we are going through my favorite sort of spring eyeshadow palettes, and there is actually, I'm now looking at in front of me, there's actually quite a lot here. In this video it will be divided in two, so there will be higher end and then indie palettes. I don't have any drugstore palettes for this section of the video, so that is something to consider, but let's now actually get to the palettes that I want to show you today. And I do have to say, I filmed this look in a first impression video before filming this one, so I know the look isn't actually like, how should I say, very springy. It is actually looking like more crunchy winter themed one, but we will just have to roll with it. So first one, higher end ones, and there are a few. So I think first I'm gonna show the palette that is actually like my absolute favorite from like higher end palettes that I gravitate towards every spring, and it's this one. So this is the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palettes, and this for me is still the best palette I think that Huda has like done, period. What I adore in this one is that yes, there are neutrals, but there are also these sort of very soft, like almost pastel-like pinks. Then we have this sort of, especially these more like sparkly shades that are included in this one. This is like a palette that has very lot of like dimension to your looks, and there is like actually quite a lot of versatility. So yes, you will get some like brownish and mauvish looks, but because it also has some of these like dimensional shades, you are able to also get depth into your looks. I don't know if this is a palette that she still does make, but if you have this in your drawers, then please dig it out, because for me, this is just one of the, I think, best higher end eyeshadows period that I have in my collection, but also like the best like higher end spring palette, spring themed palettes. Then let's get to the next one, which is a more neutral one, and this is the reflective one. So this is the Byredo Remebrance palette, and this is what I have said, I think also in my sort of ranked also within my fall palettes, because I've always said that this is for me a palette of changing seasons, and that's basically how it's divided. So basically if you divide this in half from the middle, you have this side, which is a very sort of peachy, sort of lighter tones that are very sort of appropriate for spring makeup, and then it has the sort of darker side, which is what I said also I think in my fall sort of palette video, that is something that then this side comes to play when you want this more darker fall-esque looks. And this has, I think, very beautiful like spring appropriate tones in general. So we have a bit of rosy pinkiness here and some peachiness here, and then there are also these light silver shades that you would think would not even go with the rest of the color theme, but the silver shades, they do actually fit in quite nicely with the spring theme. Overall, this is also one of the easiest palettes to use, like any of the shades will go together. The only shade that really doesn't blend well is this like darkish shimmer shade in this corner, but all the rest of them work very beautifully, and this is just a very effortless palette to work with. So if you have it, dig it out. This was a limited edition palette, so unfortunately you can't buy this anymore. Let's then, I was considering that should I even like include McGrath palettes in this video, because they are quite samey, but I did make a conclusion that I did want to include one, because there will be also, when I will be doing my summer palette video at some point, there will be one there, and then I thought that it would be only fair to put one mothership also here, but why are we not getting this open now? So the Pat McGrath mothership that I did want to include in this video is this one. So this is the Huetopian Dreams palette, and let's open it. So why I put this specifically in a spring palette video is that I think compared to the two other, because I have the two other motherships, I have Isle Divine Rose 1 and 2, and I think what makes this a spring palette is that this has this sort of a peachier tones to it, and there's also like this very sparkly, like light lilac shimmer in this one that makes it a more of a spring palette to me as compared to maybe a palette to other seasons. It is still quite like repetitive within the Pat McGrath line, especially considering the palettes that I have picked from her. There's also a reason why I haven't been buying any motherships like recently, considering the palettes that she has come out afterwards. But I do think that if you are looking for this sort of Pat McGrath palette that has this sort of more sort of lighter tones and it has a bit of a color, then I do think that this is a very very good options, and the shimmers here are very dimensional, so mainly these sort of 3 special bake shades over here, so you will get some of that sort of special sparkle into your looks, and that is I think why I wanted to include it in this video. But of course with Pat McGrath, like a lot of her palettes are quite pink toned, so if you generally just want a lighter pink toned look, then I think there are also a lot of other motherships I think that would get you the same result. Then let's go to the last ones, and these are Natasha Denona palettes. So first one I think is for those ones who want to sort of, if you want color, sort of pastel spring colors into your look, but you don't want them to be like too like obvious. So this is the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette, and this is a palette that is, it is like, for me, a bit repetitive. This is one of the palettes that I have said that this could have been a 9-pan because a lot of the shades actually look very similar in the eyes. However, if we forget the part where that this is a bit repetitive in terms of how the shades look in your eyes, this is like a very good palette if you want, like, you want to have your comfort neutrals, but you then want to have some pops of like spring pastels, because it has this sort of lighter green, like minty green shades, and then we have the sort of pink shades, and then there's also some nice light sparkle. But other than that, you still have like this sort of matte tones, and the matte tones are a bit like on the earthy side, so that also is something. So when you consider spring, you think about like the nature opening up again after winter, and flowers blooming, like beginning to bloom, and leaves growing to the trees. So this is sort of like very on par with the theme of the nature waking up again, and that is why I would recommend. So this would be for the person who wants their neutrals but wants also a bit of pastels into their spring looks. Then I think the quite last one of the higher end ones, and then the pretty obvious one. So this is the Natasha Denona pastel palette, and you all know that I don't actually use this as a standalone palette. However, if you are looking for just a pastel palette, maybe as a companion palette, or if you actually do like just making, like I have seen on Instagram and on social media, there are people who can like create quite also a nice looking like pastel on look. So I do like the quality of the pastels in this one. Is it the best pastel palette in my collection? Not necessarily. You will be soon seeing in the indie section the pastel palettes that I do actually prefer. Also, something about this one, the shimmers, they are a bit like, they aren't perhaps as, so if you have especially tried her newer palettes, the shimmers here could have definitely been a bit sparkly, or some of them do look a bit satin-esque when you put them to your eyelids, but nevertheless, if you are looking for a good like higher end pastel option, not so sure is this still available, but if you have it and you are looking for your pastel kick for the spring, this is still I think a very good option. And I mean, I think the cover and everything does scream spring if you just look at the packaging alone. As you can see, we are having different clothes today and different makeup, so unfortunately I did watch the part with the indie eyeshadow palettes for this video, and there were a bit issues with the images, sort of video image, so we are doing this section again as I'm filming other content. So for my sort of favorite spring indie eyeshadow palettes, let's first go through the sort of, I have few, let's see, I have some neutral with pops of color, but most of these are like more colorful ones. So actually I will first show the neutrals with pop of color, and then we will just go to the colorful ones. So first one from the indie sort of favorite spring palettes is this one. So this is Pokusa by Glamshop, and this is The Seduction, I think is the sort of name of this one in English. And this was their spring launch, I think it was last year. And what I think makes this as a great spring palette is that we have some neutrals. There are even a bit more darker tones in this one, but we do have these sort of nice pops of pinks and lilac here, and then these sort of very beautiful like shimmery shades that create a lot of impact to your eye looks. I would say that, for example, like my favorite shade for spring looks is definitely like this pop of lilac shade here, but also these sort of sparkly shades here are like beautiful. And there's actually like something a bit different you can do. This sort of, I think this mustard is a very interesting shade to add on to your spring looks. Something about the shimmers, like some of these are more textured shimmers that unfortunately, that if you prefer brushes, I would not like recommend this. You can't get this anymore. This was, Glamshop has a habit of discontinuing their palettes quite quickly. but there are like also these smoother shimmers that you can apply with the brush. Then let's go to a palette that I have to be very careful with because there's a shade broken. So this is the Vintage Glam palette from GlossGods, another favorite indie brand, and I've always said that if I would have to think about my favorite type of neutral palette, then this would be. And now be very careful because I don't know it. Oh fuck yeah! Sorry about swearing. Thinking how I'm gonna be able to show this. I hope you're seeing it. So this, unfortunately, yellow topper shade over here is broken. I have to repress it, but this is what I would call like that. If you're looking for this sort of spring palette that is more neutral leaning. So this, obviously you have your sort of more safer neutral tones down here, and even with some of these shimmers, but you do have this sort of pop of lilac, there's a pop of pink, this sort of beautiful topper shade here, and then this sort of beautiful sparkly like purple shade and pink shade here. So this is something that if you especially like to go like you want some color to your looks, but you still want to have your sort of safe neutrals in your spring makeup, then I think this is a great option. Now I just have to repress that one shadow so that this is actually usable, but I'd say like if I would have to rank my GlossGods palettes, which is something that I could maybe do someday, then this would probably be like the number one. Okay, now the rest of these are quite colorful ones. So first one is this one. I say that if you have watched me talking about Oden Sai, you're probably not surprised that this is in the video. So this is obviously the first Hela palette that Angelica Nyquist collaborated with Oden Sai. And this is obviously, like I have said, that this is my favorite Oden Sai palettes. I did rank my Oden Sai palettes last year. And why I think that this fits spring so perfectly is because it has this sort of, there's like greens in this one that really like remind me of the sort of like when the nature comes back alive after winter. Especially I live in a country where we do have a proper winter, and it can take quite a while for the snow to come off and grass starts growing and all the spring flowers. So this sort of is very, I think, on the more like if you think about spring and the very sort of earthy tones and how the nature comes back alive. And we do have some fun because on spring, of course, we do start having like tulips and different kind of like other flowers. So I do think that the pops of pink here, they sort of like go on with the sort of nature awakening theme also. And something like cool with this one is that you can actually also do some deepening up. So there is the last row over here for like creating depth into your looks, but a very like, especially if you like your greenish yellow shades, but you don't want them to be as in your face, then this is a very, very beautiful palette for those kind of spring looks. Then a companion palette. So this is the Plain Jane Remastered by Adept, and this is an all shimmer palette that I particularly gravitate towards this time of the year. And I think it's like pretty obvious. So this has like, it's an all shimmer palette, but most of these shimmers are on the lighter side, and I do think that these are very like, there's a bit of like a green there, there's a bit of a blue, and there are like a lot of these spring sort of pinky tones. And this is something that I do dig out every spring, and I try to combine this especially with the palettes that are maybe a bit more matte heavy. And what I do like about this one, and I do know that people have different preferences, but these have the sort of smoother Adept formula that is, I think, because some of the newer Adept like shimmers, there has been so that some of those are a bit chunky. This is what I like about the older formula, is that these are all very smooth and easy to apply to your lids. Then to I think the colorful ones. So from Cosmic Brushes I have two palettes, and I will show these. So first is the Serenity palette, and this is not from color story wise my favorite, because this is a very blue heavy, and we all know that blues and purples aren't my cup of tea. But I still think that even though this has some darker tones, this is still what I would call the it is still, I think, very pastel heavy, and that's why I did include it in this one. So we have this sort of pastel peach, there is this neony lime green here, we have the mint, we have the lilac, we have the blue. So I think that if you especially prefer these kind of tones to your, like, from the pastels or from your like colors in general, then you will get very pretty spring looks out of this one, especially if you like your more sort of pastel tones. But also I'd say that because there are the sort of deeper there are like a lot of also deeper shades, so you get some diversity also that if you want to. Something that you do have to consider is that this is a more matte heavy, as most of the, well, the Winter Wonderland one that I don't have and I didn't order because that was like blue heavy palette, I think that had maybe already closer to like 50-50 matte to shimmer ratios, but Cosmic Brushes used to be a brand that they were more matte heavy, so I think also that if you especially like all matte looks more, then this is also a good option for your spring makeup. Then the second one, I think this is the more obvious one, so this is the Delicious Delights, and this was their pastel palette, and this was their sort of summer palette from last year, and this is how the palette looks like. And this, I have said many times, this is my favorite from all the pastel palettes that I own, and all, like, I think colorful palettes in general. And I think the reason is that these are more sort of what I would call mid-tone pastel. There are a few like deepening up shades, so you can use this as a standalone palette, which I do appreciate even from a pastel palette. But they aren't like these sort of very sheer, like, I would say like traditional pastels. So these actually do pack quite a lot of punch. And there's just, I think that if you especially just like your colorful looks, like you can go, there are greens, there are pinks, there are purples, there's even a blue row over there. And they did do something fun by including a multi-chrome. So I think this was the first palette that they did so that they included their multi-chromes in. Again, this maybe is a palette that I would, for example, dig out the Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane palette, because this has still like more mattes compared to shimmers. And for my makeup preferences, I do like there to be a bit more shimmers than this has. But you can, like, I think also that if you just want to stick with this one, the shimmers that are included in this one do suit all the shades that are included in this. Then, last one, and this is actually, I think, this is the newest of the bunch. So obviously I was going to include this, so this is the Sickly Sweet palette by Blend Bunny that I got as a Christmas present from my brother. And obviously, just like the Cosmic Brushes Delicious Delights, this is here because it is like, you can't get more in-your-face spring pastel palette than this one. These are more, I'd say, on the neon side, and this also has the sort of more fair pastel shades. But what I especially love about the formula of this one, that the more like paler pastel shades, like this yellow one, the green one, this sort of lilac one, lavender one over here, these have enough base to them, so there is enough like I think white base is the thing, that there's enough white base in the sort of pigment mix, so they do actually pop even without that I have to use a white sort of eyeshadow base on my lid. And again, this has the more also deeper shades, so just like with the Delicious Delights, you are able to use this as a standalone palette, which I do appreciate very much. And the quality of this one is just like we all know the Sugar and Grunge palette that I decluttered. That was not my favorite because the pastels and the shimmers in that one were very disappointing compared to the Dollhouse palette that I had tried previously from the brand, but this one has sort of returned my sort of faith in Blend Bunny in their ability in making very good pastel shades, because this is awesome in terms of quality, and also considering that from indie brands this is also like priced quite decently. I think this is 40 something in the US dollars, so again another great pastel and colorful palette recommendation for springtime. So those were all my favorites. Comment down below what are the sort of palettes that you do gravitate towards springtime, or are you just someone that you, because I'm a person who likes seasonal makeup, I have said that quite many times, but if you are someone who just prefers to use like sort of any palettes regardless of their sort of color story and season, then of course comment down below. Also, if there's been some other if there's been some new spring palettes that you have been enjoying, then let me hear about that too in the comments. If you like this video, then push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get notifications from my future videos, then ring the bell button. You can also find me on Instagram with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog. I will be seeing you again soon in another video. Bye bye!